questions.
Of course.
Okay, so hi Shannon and Dr. Doreen. My son will be 5 in June and he's considered high functioning. He has lots of language. He talks in 4 to 5 and sometimes 6 to 7 word sentences to request and when he's trying to tell us something. He's not conversational, but will ask questions like, what are you eating? Where are we going? Barely uses who and why. He's potty trained and is smart. He knows all his letters, most colors, and numbers up to 12. His understanding is pretty good too. Now my question is, how can someone be considered high functioning yet his social and language skills still be so impaired? He's social, tested as 34 to 40 months age. I was heartbroken. I know his social is impaired, but did not know that it was that much. He's social with his brother, his father and I, and his aunt, but sometimes can be inappropriate. What are your thoughts? Would you still consider him high functioning, even though language and social being this impaired? I'm really happy he has language though and can communicate, and thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, and I love to listen to this family because yes, you have a, so first of all, yes, you have a very high functioning child. Let's just put it that way. And high functioning doesn't necessarily have to do with the skills that they come with. It has to do with their capability to learn, not with what they have already learned. Because what they have already learned is a function of what has been presented to them. So, you know, if the right stuff hasn't been presented in the right way, our children will just learn from what's around them. It's just like any other child, right? Any typical child. If you have them go to piano lessons 5 times a week, they're going to be a virtuoso in playing the piano. And if you don't, they won't. It's really that simple. So your child sounds like he's extremely capable because he's only about to turn 5. He's not even 5, which is wonderful, by the way. Perfect age. And he already has 6 to 7 word sentences. Yes, he's not using things like who and why, but he is actually asking some social questions, some investigative questions. He's curious. All he needs is the correct techniques for intervention and the correct content. This is very important. So you have a child who has the possibility to actually recover. What you need to do is you need to teach him a massive amount of stuff focused in the areas of language and social skills. And you have to do it in the right order, and you have to do it using the right techniques because he will learn very quickly, and you want to watch for things like boredom and just, you want to make sure that everything is well integrated. When you learn something and you learn something else, that the two kind of merge and don't conflict. So that the order and the technique is very important. And the content is the most important. You know, if I don't expect your child to pick these things up from his environment. There was a period of time in his early development where he wasn't learning from his environment, and even if he has achieved, even if he's got to the point where he's learning very, very rapidly from his normal environment, he's not going to catch up. In fact, he's going to fall behind. So you need to just think of it as very intensive tutoring. And the way that I would do it, and this is why I'm so happy that for years now I'm able to say this to parents, is that you are the type of parent that I made skills for. This is the reason I made skills, because the whole thing about our skills program and website was that there were children like this out there, and it was impossible for me to reach them and say, hey, here's the next 200 things I need you to learn, and then to have people out there who can actually teach the child. So skills and IBT together were exactly because of this child. So this is what you have to do, and I don't know where you are, but you need to get a team of people together who can provide therapy to your child, who can actually teach your child. And let me just say, 40 hours. Do not go below, because you have a lot of stuff to teach. And this is the type of child I get really passionate about, because he has a really good chance. So please do it right. Don't think that 5 hours of ABA is going to work. It's not. It's not going to be enough. So get out there, find a team of 4 or 5 people. If you are in a state where there's insurance coverage, then please contact us. If you have insurance coverage, we will take care of you. What we do is we'll come out and we will hire people in your area, and we will train them, and we will oversee them. And so you'll have our full program, and you won't have to do any of this. But if you don't have access to us, assume you're someplace and you want to do this yourself, you hire 4 or 5 students out of high school who are just finished with high school or going to an undergrad program. And you make sure that they can put together a schedule of the whole time that your child is free. So, he's 4.5. He doesn't need that much school. He's probably going into kindergarten, I assume, next year. And this year he's probably still in preschool. So reduce the hours in school, because right now you're going to need to do one-on-one tutoring. And have those people that you hire go through the Institute for Behavioral Training, IBT, and have them go through the therapist training portion, and just have them train, have them learn how to do therapy. When you do that, then you go into Skills, which is a different website, Skills for Autism. You go into that website and you answer a bunch of questions about your child, lots of questions. And once you've answered those questions, it will generate a profile for your child. It'll tell you kind of a list of everything he still needs to learn. Now, particularly when you become a member of Skills, you'll see the craziness of this website, and you'll see all the programs in the social area and the language area, and that's really all you need. Those are the 2 main areas that you need, but there's a lot of other stuff that you'll need to work on as well, and you'll see them. There's 8 domains, and social and language are just 2 of the 8. So, and Skills will give you everything he needs to learn, and how to, exactly the content and exactly the order and what you need to do next. So it'll tell your staff, your team, how to teach your child's social behavior and language that's necessary. I mean, something like using who and why. There's lessons that's called WH questions that will include how to teach all of the who and why questions. So then he'll do that. Then after that, we'll teach other things and very, very advanced things, so that by the time he's 7 or 8, he's functioning typically, and he's asking questions, telling jokes, playing, interacting, socializing, everything. Now, the highest level lessons, so when you're talking about advanced social skills, are pretty hard for someone who's not trained in the field, are pretty hard to just keep track of. There's a lot of detail involved to everything I said. So your first choice would be to try to get a supervisor who's board certified, who's a BCBA or licensed, and have an experienced individual oversee this program for you. But whatever you do, whether you come to CARD or you do it on your own or you go to another professional, use Skills, because I can guarantee you that there's no other place where you will get that level of detail in those high-level areas that you want to teach your child. I promise you that. No other program exists that will give you hundreds of lessons to teach your child how to tell jokes or how to lie or all these advanced conversation things. Skills does that, and so it's there for you, and these are some ways that you can use it. But don't worry, don't be discouraged. You're very, very blessed. Your child's very young and very high functioning, and will do well with the right intervention.
And I just want to say to you as a parent, take a breath and get excited. Because something that somebody said to me many years ago was, if somebody could guarantee you that if you worked as hard as you possibly could for the next 2 years, that all the things that you want would be there, how hard would you work?
Yes.
And that's really what's in front of you now. Yes. Is that for the next 2 years, you've got a lot of work to do.
That's right.
But that the progress is there for your child, all of the hallmarks of your child being able to do that. But it's going to take some hard work. So circle your wagons, take a breath, and get excited.
That's right. That's such a lovely way to put it, too. I mean, if you know for sure that the reinforcer is there, it just requires a lot of work. And with a child like this, the reinforcer is going to be there. You just have to put in a lot of time. Yeah,
but it's worth it. I guarantee you it's worth it. It's all of our kids are worth that time and that energy and that excitement. So I want to move on now to a question that came in this morning. Someone wrote in and said, as much as I admire and love you both and love and respect my therapist, I really dislike the way your office runs its schedules. It does not make make sense to have a therapist driving all around the city. It's not feasible for them or your company. They should be assigned 3 cases. That way they are fully attentive to their clients. Your therapists are spending half their day on the road when they can be utilizing their time in actual therapy. I fight every contract to get my kids the maximum hours, but then the office tells me that they can't fulfill his hours. But I just realized that it's not because of the therapist, because they're not getting their hours, but because of new clients you are bringing on. They are only giving these kids 15 hours to start and reducing ours. That's not fair for both parties. Keep either on the waiting list until you get more staff, but don't shorten our kids the therapy they need. Not fair. And I want to thank you for writing in, and I want to thank you because when I said to you, we have a question about this, you said, oh, please, I want to answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I always want to answer those types of questions because I think that there's only 2 things that can happen with questions like this. Either I learn something or the person learns something. And if I learn something, or both. If I learn something, then it's great because we can change the system and make it better.
Yeah.
And if they learn something, then it'll reduce their stress.
Yeah.
So here's where we are with regards to therapists. I completely agree with you. I wish that we could avoid the whole driving thing altogether. So first of all, think of this. The first way that we could avoid driving is center-based.
Yes.
Right? Center-based is a fantastic solution because it just as this parent said, if you drop your child off at the center, you will have back-to-back therapy. What happens, which is good for the child, and what happens for the therapist is they go to the center and they work 2 hours with your child, 3 hours with another, 2 hours with yours, and so on and so forth, and there's no gaps in their schedules whatsoever, and it's not wasted. What happens for the company is also great. We don't have to pay travel time and mileage, which is a huge cost for us. I mean, people sometimes don't realize that our travel time and mileage cost goes over $2 million a year. Like, it's a huge cost. So, center-based is the best. And the only reason that it has not increased is because it's inconvenient for parents. That's very simply said. Every parent prefers to have this in their home. When we did therapy, and let me just go back and say, when we did therapy at UCLA in the very beginning, guess what? Most of it was at the center. It wasn't all at home. People think that the therapy has to be at home. No, it just has to generalize to the home. So some of it could still be in the home, but a lot of it could also occur in the center, and it's still one-to-one. So we really encourage parents, first of all, to try to do that. Second thing is, I agree with you. We have this thing called zoning. Zoning allows us to have all therapists zoned to a specific region, so they never leave that region. And we keep the regions pretty small, so a standard office would have 7 zones or even 8 zones, where it's like, you know, within the 10 miles or 15 miles north of this area is just these therapists, and these therapists will only work on the east side of this and so on. So we zone all of our offices simply for the purpose of reducing drive time. So that's the second thing that we do. The third thing is that therapists generally are only on 3 cases, just so you know, unless it's a full-time therapist, which is very few and far because most of our therapists are only 20 hours, 25 hours a week. So that's about 3 cases. So they don't get tons and tons of cases. If a therapist is telling you that, that's not true. And their cases remain the same, by the way, for the duration of the schedule. So and we only do schedule changes twice a year, and in some locations 3 times a year. And that's simply because of the therapist schedule changes, because the majority of our therapists are also in school, they're in college. So we change with their semester change. Or we change June because our kids' schedules change for the summer. But generally speaking, they're tied to the same cases unless they request off or the family requests a change. So that's the other thing. The therapist should not be pulled from your case or reduced from your case in order to start a new case. That shouldn't really be happening. Although I will tell you that it's very, very hard to say no to new families who've been waiting also for a year. So recruitment, so we have a whole department called recruitment, and it's a very active department. So this is how our recruitment works. We have 2 key people at headquarters who are in charge of just therapist recruitment. Those people then deal with a therapist liaison in each location. So there's a therapist liaison in each of our sites, and that person is the person that does sort of the live interviews and also the initial training for the therapists. We're up to about 1,500 now. We bring in therapists all the time. I get weekly reports of therapists hiring. It is unbelievable how fast we are hiring. The problem is we spend a lot of time training our folks because we can't really take someone off, just out of school and place them in your home. So we do spend a lot of time.
Would you want that?
Yeah, you should want that. But and also I have to say that like one of the big things for us is just safety, I suppose, and we fingerprint our people. We wait for clearances. Clearances sometimes take time because we don't want to send someone to your house who's had a bad history or criminal history. And we also, in some locations, in some states, we're mandated to gain a certificate or a license of approval for that person before we put them out there. In Louisiana, every single therapist is licensed. And licensure takes somewhere like 3 months, 4 months sometimes. Now, it's very hard to hire someone and then have them wait for 3 or 4 months. So it's a very difficult situation. The other thing is, in addition to hiring, in addition to licensure and credentialing, we have to get them in network with your carrier. Some carriers require us to put every single person's name through, which, you'd be shocked. But like, for instance, there's this one carrier right now that's taking somewhere like 4 months to license my people or to approve my people or put them in network, which is just ridiculous. So that means a lot of people are waiting. And that's why the new therapist can't be used. So a new therapist might come into the system, but there's all this bureaucracy that prevents us from using that new therapist across the board. So then, there's families that are waiting, and I know it's hard for existing families to understand this, but we have families in our Virginia location, for instance, we have 50 people on the wait list, and they're waiting for over a year, and it's dangerous. We're almost past the window of opportunity for some of these kids, or in some of these other cases, it's just a child who has really significant needs. I have a child right now who's extremely self-injurious. I have to get someone in there. Yeah. And as fast as I hire a therapist, generally the rule here, by the way, is do not take therapists off existing cases. Never. The number one metric that I look at every week, not only I look at, but our managing director looks at and all the operations staff looks at, is what we call contract fulfillment. Contract fulfillment means what percentage of your contract, your child's funding, are we fulfilling? So the number one thing that all offices, all administrative staff get reprimanded for is if they don't fulfill your contract completely. So both supervision and therapy, we are very, very much tracking that and trying very, very hard to fulfill that. Now, I honestly wish that there was a way that we could reduce further the time of driving, because it is time consuming, but it is so much better than it used to be because of the zoning and because of the fact that the schedules are really packed pretty solid now. And because of technology. Technology has helped us. But the good news is, Shannon, that we are, I think, very soon about to pilot a new scheduling software that has just come out. And we've built our own our IT team has built some portions of this as well, and it's pretty spectacular, actually. So what it does is it matches characteristics of the child and the therapist, which we put in. These are our characteristics. So for instance, we've said, therapists must have training in this, this, and this. Right. Therapist must be male or female. Therapist must be in this particular zip code or region, and must have X amount of years of experience. So like how many people are senior, how many are junior, and so on, and must be able to work these hours. And then some of our children have special needs, like even more special needs, like nonverbal child. Right. So therapists must also be trained trained to do nonverbal programs, or aggressive child. So preferably we want a larger therapist or a male therapist, that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
And the system gives you all possible options.
So you've got like an algorithm
exactly.
to match them. Great.
And not only that, but the system will, at any given time, if a cancellation occurs, so I didn't mention another big thing is the cancellations, right? Of course, a child might get sick, so a parent will cancel. Sometimes some of our families cancel for reasons that are not that valid, but still, they cancel. So that therapist now has a block of time open, which we would like to pay them for. So we want to reroute them to another family, and that's a difficult process.
Right.
And the opposite occurs, where a therapist will cancel, and these are young folks, right? And who knows why they cancel? They cancel because they want to go to the ball game, whatever.
Right.
Sometimes. And so when that happens, we want to track another therapist down and place them in that session for a makeup. So, and this system helps you do that. It helps you find the closest therapist with the similar credentials. Yeah. So, we're working very hard. Scheduling is our biggest nightmare. Yeah. No question. It always has been.
On both sides.
Absolutely. But I have to tell you, when I started this company, I used to have my 10 therapists and my 20 families schedules on the wall in my office, and at night I'd be trying to patch them together. We're in a much better place now.
Yeah. I will say, too, as a parent who's been through this, there were times when I could have written that email at one point.
Absolutely.
But now that I have seen both sides of it, I have an understanding of what the logistical nightmare of it is. But I want to leave you with something positive. And you brought up a couple of things that you can do to empower yourself to make it better, because we all have the ability to make this equation exponentially better.
Absolutely.
So if you have the ability to take your child in for those center-based hours, that's the number one thing that you can do, and that will eliminate that part of that problem for you. But I also want to say to anybody who is watching, whether you're a card family or other, they're always recruiting therapists.
Oh,
and
yes.
If you know good young people, I know once when I showed up at Sienna Green or Wooten's desk and I was like, I want to understand why I can't have this therapist at this time, because we have it in our contract. And she was like, how about if you go find me a therapist that's going to be good? And I did. I went and I went to all my friends and said, who has, really wonderful young people that you don't want to have working at Taco Bell, that have something higher in mind for their lives, that want to do something, and found a wonderful therapist and brought her to Sienna and said, I have done my part.
Excellent.
And you can too. And if each family did that.
Oh, yes, for sure.
We find really good quality people.
No question about it. It's my family and friends always make fun of me because wherever we go, right? So we're sitting at a restaurant and a waiter or a waitress turns out to be just really sharp and just someone who gets it and has a great memory and is like taking care of everyone. I'm like, what do you want another job? And how much do you get here? And
that's how you found Peter Farrig.
Oh, absolutely. I recruit people all the time.
Yes.
And if you can do that to help us, that would be spectacular.
That makes a difference for everyone, not just for you, but it makes a difference for the families coming in. And I want you to know, if you think for a second that the people at CARD aren't constantly worried and tweaking and trying to make this better, I want to tell you.
We are.
They are. And if you think that there aren't people who are lying awake worrying about those people who are on the waiting list, I want you to know that I see them. They are.
It's very, very difficult. It's a balancing act. We don't ever want to reduce the quality or hours of your child's program in order to help other children. We do find it our own responsibility to hire and train other therapists for the children. But having said that, I think the biggest issue with this is just scheduling and driving. It is unavoidable that therapist is only going to be on 3 children or 4 maybe maximum, but it still involves a lot of driving. And as Shannon said, please, if you can, even if it's for 1 session a week, take your child into the center. That is the best thing you can do for us.
Okay, and they had a follow-up, and they said they're having to leave. She says, I can't stay online, but we'll listen later. But why don't all CARD offices offer the services we get emails about, such as shadows at summer camp or the Holiday Inn Center activity days, CARD Safari, etc.? It's very sad to see all these great things are out there, but not for us, and thank you. And I want you to know that there's things coming to each place.
There's additional things coming, which are really great, but they are they should be at every office. So if they're not, you need to write into Shannon, please, and tell me who told you these things are not offered at your location. I don't know which location you're at, but all of these things are offered at every location.
And we had someone else write in and say, OMG, so true about recruitment. I have been lucky to personally recruit. Every one of my son's therapists, such a huge stress reliever. Recruit, recruit, recruit. It is.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So absolutely love that. But good things are in the pipeline, and double check at your office to see what's available in your office.
And please let me know if there is a program that we write about that isn't offered at your office, and either I'll let you know it's coming. We roll things out one location at a time or 2 locations at a time, but Card Safari, for instance, should be everywhere.
Okay.
So a lot of these programs are everywhere, so please let me know. I would love to follow up on that. And sometimes the people at the offices get overwhelmed, and then they're not offering something at a particular time, and we don't know about it.
Okay. So make sure that you be in contact fast enough. All right, but I want to take this next one. I noticed the other day during an ABA session, as the therapist prompted my son for eye contact, that I was actually the one not giving him eye contact. I started to pay more attention to my own eye contact, and it turns out I have pretty poor eye contact myself. Then I thought to myself, how am I supposed to teach my son to have good eye contact if I have an issue with it myself? And she says, thoughts, suggestions.
I just love people who learn from every scenario. I try to be that person. Just ask yourself, I guess, why you're avoiding eye contact, and try to increase it to a point that you're just push your comfort level a little bit every day. Eye contact is really kind of an important thing. It gives the individual that you're speaking with some sense of acknowledgement that you are connected to them. And that's very, very important for many different reasons, whether you're expressing something or receiving some information. So I would just say, and there are adults who are uncomfortable with eye contact. It sometimes has to do with having been raised in an environment full of anxiety. So you're sort of afraid of what will happen if you connect to another individual. But, and sometimes it has many other reasons. So, please do, if it's comfortable for you, just try to push the limit a little bit and increase, we do eye contact with shaping, right? Mm-hmm. So first we generate eye contact so the individual, the child understands what we expect. And then we just increase the duration of holding contact. And don't do it to a point where it's ridiculous. Even now where I'm speaking with Shannon, for instance, I will switch back and forth. Eye contact is kind of transitory. It's not stable, but it is a very important feature.
And I don't know if this is inappropriate for me to say too, but check your vitamin levels and things. That I know that I went through a period of time where I wasn't taking a probiotic and wasn't taking a B supplement, and that I was dizzy a lot.
Interesting.
And my doctor I was noticing that I was having a hard time looking at something, which sometimes manifested in eye contact. But anyway, and it was when Jen was going through autism, and the doctor said something to me about it and said, you're not making a lot of eye contact. And I thought, that's weird because I'm capable of it.
Interesting.
But I went on a really good probiotic and a really good vitamin B, and that made a tremendous difference.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I noticed that if my son doesn't take his probiotic, that we have a slippage in that too, and that when he takes his methyl B12 shots, we have better eye contact.
Yeah, I've heard that before as well. I've heard about the methyl B12 having a huge effect.
Yeah, so think of that for yourself. And I don't think any of us can be harmed by being on a really good probiotic in this day and age. I think it's a really good thing for everything.
Absolutely.
And see if that's something that will help, as well as working at increasing it.
Okay, I'll try to make it succinct, but Doreen, in my household sometimes my husband will start dealing with Wyatt with a behavior, and I'll be in the next room and I'll hear the escalation that might occur as a result of that. And I'm going to tell you what the situation was. This morning, he makes his eggs, and he's gotten very independent. He sprays the pan, he puts the eggs in, he scrambles them, and everything.
He should come and teach my kids.
No kidding. So he does that, and he loves to put gluten-free, casein-free cheese into his egg. Now, what my husband's been noticing is he dumps like half the package of diet in there, right? So Reed said, Wyatt, no, I'm going to do it. And Wyatt has been used to doing this himself. So he starts to get upset. And Reed said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm putting the cheese in. You use too much. And then Wyatt starts to have a complete meltdown. And then Reed says, you know what? You're just not getting the cheese anymore. So I hear all this, and then he just walks out of the room and lets Wyatt use the cheese anyway. And I say to Reed, can you come here for a minute? And I said, maybe it would be better to use this as there's a middle ground here, that you might have said, you have to use less cheese. Let's measure how much. Let's get him a little small measuring cup of how much cheese he can use. But now you've laid down the gauntlet. You said no more cheese, yet he's in there using the cheese. So how...
What do we do? What do we do?
What do we do now?
What do we do in the moment, and what do we do to prevent this happening
Because
again?
tomorrow he's going to say...
Well, I'm going to take you back to the basics.
Okay.
Because the answer is always in the basics here. And before I start, I want to tell Reed how much I love him.
Yes, we all love
We all
Reed.
love you. But this is, it's really the basics, right? How do you want to change your behavior?
Right.
What are the two things you change in order to change the behavior?
Antecedent and consequence.
There you go.
Right.
Okay. So what Reed did this morning is he did a correct consequence, but he didn't change the antecedent. What you told him to do was to change the antecedent.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about that. It is important that when you give some sort of instruction that you follow through all the way. So he was correct in that he followed through, and that he was harsh about it. He said he put down the line and he stuck with it. You need to stick with it. You cannot give in even if you've made a mistake.
No, but he let him get the cheese.
Okay, well, you can't. You need to, when you say no more cheese or I'm going to do it, you need to follow up with what you just said. But the error in the whole thing is exactly what you said. Wyatt isn't understanding why today I can't do it. We often forget that the antecedent in changing behavior for our kids is explaining the why in a way that they understand. He doesn't understand. He doesn't get it. He enjoys doing that whole thing.
Of course he does.
So why do I not get to do it? What did I do wrong?
Right.
And that frustration escalates, and he's freaking out, and he has every right to freak out. So what do? You fix that portion, the antecedent portion, and the way to fix it is really very simple. You take that, is it shredded cheese?
Yeah.
Yes.
You take when it comes in from the supermarket, you put it in 10 little Ziploc bags. That's it, you're done. Every morning he will take a Ziploc and he will use that, and nobody has to worry about it. You modify antecedents. Don't forget that you will modify antecedents. We do that for ourselves, right? In order for me to remember to take all my vitamins, I put them in a little container.
Right.
Why do I do that? I do it because if I don't do it, I won't see them. I won't remember which ones I have to take, what time I have to take, and so on.
Right.
So that's all you're doing for him.
Okay.
That's it.
Did you see
modify stuff?
The look that went back and forth between the two of us? Because it's that thing. Because we get so caught up in the emotion and so caught up in the thing. And like for you to say, oh, it's as simple as putting it in 10 little baggies, and both of us are like, oh, duh.
But you are correct. See, you experienced the same frustration that I experienced when you remember, Shannon, I always tell you I love my teenagers. Yeah. Part of the reason I love the teenagers is because when I generally enter the world of a teenager, they're already in such a bad place. Like, people have gotten to a point where they're never explaining anything to them, and they're so mad because no one has ever told them why. No one has ever made things clear to them. I swear to God, none of our guys would ever be aggressive if they understood the whys. The reason they get frustrated is because they don't get it. They don't know why this was just taken away from me. Why am I being put in timeout? Why do I have to rush? Why can't I have my food when I want it? Why? They don't get any of that. No one ever makes it explained in a way they get it.
Okay.
And for Wyatt, it's not even necessary for him to understand, like, let's say, it is too much cheese, therefore it's too unhealthy for you, and whatever. It's not necessary. Just put packages. That's it.
Okay. Now, on the other side of this, because this happens a lot too, that you've got something set up with your child, you feel like you've conveyed it to your spouse, and then there is that moment that it escalates, and the spouse lays down the gauntlet and says, "There's no cheese."
We will always have have slightly different points of view.
Right.
I think this type of thing is good to do, and if you know, anytime if you have a disagreement, these are the things you're supposed to discuss with your supervisor anyway, and to say which one is right, how do we deal with it, and they should say this is the way to go with it. And definitely when a child, so let's assume, let's also answer the other side, let's assume a poor decision is made, either you or Reed. Somebody does something wrong, and now the child is escalating.
Right.
What do you do? Okay. What you do is really simple. You don't want to give in, but you also don't want to escalate to a point where the child has the biggest tantrum of his life.
That was what was beginning to happen.
Right.
Today.
So what do? You guys should both know this. What do? You simplify the task. But you reward it somehow.
Do you go in
him.
and stop the other parent, though? Because I'm always worried about making it so that he doesn't have the authority if I go in and fix it.
Yeah.
So do you let them stay doing it, or do you go in and intercede?
I mean, you know, that's a difficult situation because, like, on the one hand, you have very different children.
Yes.
In their case, for instance, if something really incredibly wrong is occurring and you have a better solution, then you should go ahead and probably intervene, because it's not going to, Wyatt's never going to think she has more authority than he does. He's pretty much going to, he's going to still remain respectful to both and so on.
Right.
Jim, on the other hand, is too high functioning in terms of he will start thinking that if you win every time, right?
So it's very
So it has to do with the child very much, but it also has to do with, you know, what I do in my household is I'll probably, and we never have disagreements about the kids really, we sometimes have disagreements about other things in the house, but what I'll do is I will wait and discuss it later and then agree either way.
Right.
If you haven't had the time to come to an agreement, if the issue hasn't risen, if you can let it go, it's probably best to let it go that one time and then discuss it and come up with a plan before you intervene. But sometimes as a mother, it's so hard because you see your child escalating and you're like, okay, we need to stop. And I would say, you know, there are ways you can stop a situation without making the other parent look bad. Right? There are ways in which you could just step in and say, let me help.
Right.
Let me help. And always, the first thing to ask yourself is, can I increase the prompt level or the modeling so that the child's successful, so that I can increase the reward. And there's nothing wrong with that. Ever. Even if your child knows exactly how to do a procedure, they're never going to unlearn it by you prompting them more one day. So if he's freaking out for whatever reason and you go in and you're like, come on, let's do it. Wyatt, you do it. Let's pour excellence. Just maneuver him through it like you used to in the beginning. And reward, and the situation is done. Meanwhile, I know that by then Reed's probably angry and he himself is kind of ready for a fight, right? I mean, sometimes...
No, he just said I did it wrong again. And I'm like, no, don't go into that victim thing. You didn't do it wrong. You were just dealing with it with the best you could. And he goes, you're absolutely right, though. I didn't think about teaching him to put it in a cup. He said, I didn't think about that.
But he did think about trying to consequate it and trying to follow up with the consequence. We're like, no, we're not going to do this. And he took it away. You know, that is kind of the right thing to do as well in terms of you just disrespected the rule, so I have to consequence.
But then Wyatt got the cheese back and ended up making it, so he kind of got his way. So tomorrow he will have the baggie, and I will say, this is the correct amount of cheese.
Who cares? Just label them. Just leave it there.
Here's your cheese.
Here's your cheese.
Okay.
And what I want to congratulate you on is that together you have all the components. This is why you're so good together. Together you have all the components. You just got to put it in the right order at the right time.
And I have to say, it's hard for the dads. It's so hard for the dads, because they do have, no matter what, they do, you know, we're the people running, we're the captains of this ship when it comes to our kids, right? We're always the captain, in most cases, not always, most cases. And there's a level of enjoyment that goes with that for us and for them, like not having to run the ship, right? Not having to run all the decisions. There's a level of enjoyment, and for us as well, having things our way. And sometimes that changes, right? And sometimes
it's changed in my household.
Yeah,
the dynamic is he's taking over more of it, and I think you're going through the same thing.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's wonderful. That's fantastic. But along with that goes, you both have to discuss things and have a mutual plan, because you can't be the only one in charge.
Right.
And for dads,
and like you said, that's where our supervisors come in, and that's where our team comes in to give us a plan.
Absolutely. And dads often feel, I might as well avoid it because I'm going to screw it up.
Right.
And you don't want that to happen, because you really want them to stay with it and stay involved and get it going.
Yeah.
And they play such an important role.
They do. I have learned that I have a way that I think it's supposed to be, and I'm 100% sure that it's the right way, right, in my head, and that I have to let go of that expectation on a minute-by-minute basis and talk to myself about it and go, just because it's not the way I would have done it doesn't mean it's wrong, and that even though it's not done the way I want it, I have to let go of that expectation that it will be my way if I can't be there to do it.
Yeah. I have to tell you, I think the number one reason that we have these conflicts, male and female, is because females tend to have a lot more theory of mind, and males don't. It's just that way.
Yes.
So when we see our kids, the first thing is, oh my God, how is he feeling? How's Wyatt experiencing this?
Right.
What is he seeing? You jump into his skin
being
immediately.
taken away.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? You jump immediately into his shell, and you're like, how is he seeing this? Right? And men don't think that way. They're like, he did something wrong, I gotta punish him.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean?
It's
very
discipline.
different.
Learn to listen to your
very
father. And I'm
different.
thinking, well, he just had a major.
He didn't do anything wrong.
Thing taken away that he was proud of, his independence, making his cheese omelet in the morning. He didn't see it the same way.
Yeah. And that theory of mind, your ability to see your child's vision, his perspective, is what makes you as a mom always protect him, defend him, want to see you see the world from his eyes.
Right.
And so there's always going to be somewhat of that, but I think we all kind of can get better also at seeing the world better from our spouse's eyes.
Right. And I know we're running out of time, but I had one other thing that I wanted to run by you, and that is we're dealing with trying to fade out or lessen Wyatt's ritualistic behaviors.
Yes, he's got a lot of them,
A lot of them. And if he doesn't get those things right on time, and if we change it at all, if Daddy doesn't take him to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf on Saturday morning, there's a tantrum. If he doesn't get his last soy milk decaf coffee in the morning before walking out the door, it doesn't matter if it's going to make us run late, he's got to have it. And when I say, well, that's going to make you late for school, you can choose that, but you'll be late to school. He hates being late to school. Then it goes into, I don't want a choice. I don't want a choice. I want both. I want both.
Oh, God, that's so amazing. That's just so amazing. It's such a, it is such a clear, it's just such a great example of life, know? And, that's the situation for everyone, right? I don't want a choice either in a million things, but you got to do them all.
Right. But when you have a child that has a lot of these rituals,
he's got a lot.
How do you cut those rituals out?
Yeah, I think first thing is list them. Okay, put them all on a list. The very first thing, because you might have some on that list that are the easiest to change.
Right.
So those are the ones that are, let's say that he's. A, maybe more willing to give up, or B, are just really easy things to fade away.
Okay.
You can put them on a shaping schedule and they'll fade off. Okay. So and then the more important thing about the list is you put the list together and you cross off whatever you think you can work on first, work on those and get rid of them. Okay. And then you kind of have him help you put them in order of importance. Right? Some are going to be more important to him and others are going to be less important. One thing you can do is you can change the time of when they occur. So for instance, with Wyatt, so the whole thing about routine is that it gives you a sense of control. Okay, and that's the key to it. It helps you control what happens in your environment. Therefore, you feel safer, and that is the whole thing about OCD behaviors, obsessive compulsive behaviors. So let's say his latte in the morning or whatever it is. Would he agree to have his latte but have it in the car, or would he agree that he will get his latte when he comes back from school, or would he? In other words, don't remove the entire thing, but change its time during the day so that his schedule works better. I mean, what you did is fantastic in terms of which do you prefer, but he could also maybe make a choice if he knew which one do you want to do first. Like if you do school now, you can still get the latte after school. Or if you do school now, you can have it in the car, perhaps.
Okay.
And quite
but if
honestly,
they're screaming, I don't want a choice. I want both.
Yeah, you kind of have to approach it before they get to the screaming stage.
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying it's not like I often say to Shannon. We try to deal with things when it gets to the screaming stage, whereas what we should do is make it a lesson that we work on it when it's calm. So this is an issue for Wyatt.
Yes.
So when you go home, before there's any sort of tantrum, make the list.
Right.
You know what I mean? And say, tomorrow, if this should happen, let's talk about this. Like days when you have to choose, which one do you want to do? How about if we have it after school? How about if you have it in the car? These are some choices that, these are better choices. And that's really all you can do. I mean, I often tell people, pick your battles with this OCD behavior. And by the way, they have a function, these behaviors. They make the individual feel less anxious.
Of course.
That's their function.
My order makes me feel less anxious.
Absolutely. So does he know how to deal with anxiety? In other words, let's assume he has a situation where he can't have those things.
Right.
Is he going to go into panic, which it sounds like he does? And does he have a way to bring himself down from panic?
Okay.
So often, and if he's freaking out, so then another thing you want to talk to the supervisor and make sure your staff teach him is just the breathing exercises. I think Wyatt knew how to do that before.
He does.
He just doesn't, we don't practice it all the time.
Right,
He should. It should become part of his life where I'm going there.
Right.
Okay, come on. Take him back, teach him that self-regulation. That's like the most helpful thing.
Right.
It's tough. It is very tough. Our kids have more of those needs than typical kids.
They do.
But he continues to make progress.
Yes, he does.
As do we all.
Does.